Welcome to Transform Your Health World Summit 2014, hosted by Marcie Peters, America's whole life coach. This is your opportunity to transform your health and life. And now, here's your host, Marcie.
Hello everyone. Welcome back to Transform Your Health World Summit 2014. I'm Marcie Peters, your host, and today I would like to introduce you to Dr. Cory Honickman. She has a doctorate in clinical psychology and a master's degree in clinical social work, and she's a certified love coach. She lives in LA, and she is Hollywood's most sought-after monogamy consultant and the creative visionary behind the modern monogamy programs, which we're going to talk about today, which are revolutionizing relationships all over the world. She coaches singles and couples. Cory, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to get a relationship expert in as part of the summit because that's obviously very important for health and happiness, even though it's not directly health related. It has everything to do with happiness, is how we interact with other people, and our relationships and those connections are extremely important. So I know you're in a unique profession, not just counseling couples, but really helping them revive their relationship and their sex life. And this is very important. How did you get into this work in the first place?
Yeah, well, I started my career as a social worker, as you mentioned, working with kids. And I had always, prior to that, I had always known, like, love was always around in the air. And I just always knew that it was something, that love was important, and that it really contributed to not only our happiness, but as you said, very much so to our health. And that was really became clear to me when I saw the lack of love and communication that couples were having when I was working with families as a social worker. So the family would come in, and they would think because the children were having behavioral issues, and everyone would be pointing their finger at the kid like, you are bad, you're doing these things, you're ruining our family. They call it like the squeaky wheel. And I realized after working with families for so long that those children's behavioral issues were a direct result of the parents just not communicating well, not getting along well, not liking each other, and just not having this type of sex and lovemaking and intimacy that they should be having. And it just became really clear to me in comparison that when the parents were getting along and were, really intimate and having this really close relationship, the children were happier and healthier and just progressing well in their education. And it was just, I had like an aha moment.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. So you wanted to be the person who could help smooth out those relationships and really make things better for everyone, and especially for the children, because the children are the ones who suffer the most oftentimes.
Exactly.
Okay. So, all right. So tell us about, I know that you have these modern monogamy principles. Is that where we should start, or what do you think?
Sure. I mean, yeah, that works fine with me. I mean, it's a very kind of different approach to working with people, Ideally, I like to start working with couples when they're still happy, and it's more of an education thing. But unfortunately, just the way the world works, people don't tend to come to someone like me until there's something wrong in the relationship. So kind of, I guess the number one and most important principle would be prevention, and just really understanding that your relationship is just like any other part of your health. Even insurance companies are aware of that now and are paying for prevention, because as most people in my profession say, therapy and counseling and education is much less expensive than a divorce. So really understanding that, don't wait until there's something wrong in the relationship, and learn what you need to learn, get the skills you need to get while you're still happy and in love and are willing to do anything for each other. So then when the things do arise and the intimacy starts fading and things start coming up, you know what to do, and you're not scared, and you don't think it necessarily means that you're falling out of love, and you're saying, oh, this is what it is. We know Cory said this, or my relationship educator said this was going to happen, and it just makes a world of a difference.
Okay, so number one is prevention. And you know what? That's true of anything in life. Certainly with health, you know, you want to establish those good habits and get those skills and information prior to things turning bad and ugly and desperate and going into survival mode. And, you know, you don't want to end up with that type of situation. You actually want to catch it before it starts. So that makes sense that with a relationship you would want to do that as well. And at the same time, it's counterintuitive, because when you're happy and when you're in love and everything's going smoothly, the last thing on your mind is probably, well, let me get the skills that I need for the rest of my life for this relationship. So
exactly. People don't think like that. So I'm hoping that, you know, with the evolution of the way we are growing as humans, that's something that we start to instill and enlist in our lives.
Yeah, and starting to appreciate planning ahead and doing that work ahead of time.
Exactly.
So what's the second principle?
So I think another really important thing is being happy in our own lives. Because when we're not happy, the first thing we tend to do is feel or think that it's our partner that we're not happy with, or a relationship. If I could just change this relationship and get into a better one or find the right person, then I'll be happy. And it never works out that way, because you're going to go, if you do end it with that person and in hopes that things are going to be better, you're going to go into another relationship with all the same issues and all the same problems and all the same questions. So really looking to yourself, taking responsibility for your happiness, and understanding that it's not the person's fault and that you have to be responsible for your own happiness, and own that instead of putting it on your relationship.
I love that. And that's actually the first place I start as a health coach when I work with my clients, is personal responsibility. And that is the key to everything, because if you're not willing to step up and take responsibility for the way your life is manifesting, then it's going to be really hard to make changes and to ultimately have the life that you're looking for, health-wise or happiness-wise.
I mean, it's definitely easier to point fingers in the moment and say, you know, I'm not happy because of you, because that's a way to avoid making changes in your own life, which, as we know, is very difficult, whether it be with your health or with your relationship or any kind of changes as human beings is very difficult. So it's easier to point fingers and say, if I just change this one little thing, get you out of my life, then I'll be fine. But it doesn't work that way. And we need to really be happy and productive and doing what we want in our own lives so we can feel rounded out. And this way our relationship feels like something that's good for us and that's making us happy and that fulfills us, and not something that we use to define us or define our happiness.
Yes, blaming is never the solution. And actually, when you're in a state of blaming, then you don't get a chance to focus on yourself and find out what really makes you happy. So I love that principle, is finding what works for you. And happiness is an inside job. It has to come from the inside out. You can't rely on that from other people exclusively.
Yes,
okay.
100%.
Great. And then how many principles do we have total here?
I'm not sure what I sent over to you. I have, you know, it goes back and forth. I have several that I usually discuss, but I don't know. I don't remember exactly which ones that I sent.
Well, let's get the important ones in. So what's the third one?
The next one that, off the top of my head, is definitely getting to know yourself, knowing who you are, knowing what makes you happy, knowing what makes you tick, knowing how do I want to be treated when I'm sad? How do I react when I'm angry? And being able to customize your relationship to you and your partner's personality and your emotional needs. I think that's one of the principles also we'll talk about, but it's so important to not try to fit yourself into this cookie cutter idea of what a relationship should be, and really personalize it and customize it and learn yourself and say, I know this is what I need. I know that I am not going to ever want to XYZ. And I'm going to, you know, it's all part of kind of like setting boundaries and deal breakers and knowing where you can go and where you should not go with your spouse. Like, we should all know that. We've been with this person for, you know, however many years. We should know I should not say this to my partner when they're upset, because if I say this, that's just provoking them, and that's going to get them more upset. We need to know these things instead of trying to navigate them as they come up. So customizing and really making your relationship a personalized environment where you guys both thrive and where you bring out the best in each other. That's huge, because I often hear, when I'm around you, I just don't like the person I am, and like things like that. So we want to make sure that we like the person that we are when we're with this person. And remember, that's on us. We got to know who we are, and we got to be able to teach our person how to treat us and what brings out the best in us. And it's amazing and beautiful to see the difference of a couple who knows themselves and has had these conversations, and the difference between those people and the people who haven't and who don't know. And it's just like night and day. And it's really the difference of being able to experience true love and just doing it because that's what the world says we should do, or what our mom said we should do. I mean, it makes it real in my mind, not just some cookie cutter relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. But so how do you get to that place where you've set yourself up for that relationship success, where knowing yourself is one thing, but then you talked about training them or setting them up to be able to respect you or treat you the way you want to be treated so that you can be the person that you really want to be, or your best self. What are some ways to get to that place?
Well, I mean, I always like to say that if you can work with somebody who's like a mediator or an independent type educator, that's probably your best bet, because they are trained in this. And, just like when if your car needs, something, you bring it to the person who knows how to fix cars. I believe that, or, even with like the dentist or with whoever, you go to the person who's the expert. So I always hope that couples can do that and they have the resources to do that. But if for some reason they don't, or they can't in that moment, the internet is an amazing resource. I mean, we know that we have everything at our fingertips, and just doing some searches, tips on how to get to know myself. I mean, just that little thing. I mean, reading things, educating yourself. Just like if you were to, like, for example, want to go skydiving, you'd get an instruction in how to go and how to do it and how to pull the thing and how to be safe. And it's this very similar thing. And just being introspective, and something that's really important is asking the right questions. Because a lot of people, I notice couples will have conversations, and I'm like, oh, like if I sit on TV or like somewhere where I can't get in there and say something, it's like, you're not asking the right questions. Like, why aren't you saying this? There's just going deep and really being introspective and understanding that if you're a surface person, you're going to have a surface relationship. And if you're okay with that, okay. There's some people say, simple-minded people, maybe they're not as deep, but maybe they're happy like that, and that's okay. But I think when it comes to love, it's really important to have this depth so that you can experience that closeness, and that brings the desire to want to do these things and to want to get to know each other and to want to know yourself so much that you say, hey, I know that when I'm like this, I need this. And it just is really as simple and almost kind of as difficult and intricate as that.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so what's the next principle we should discuss?
The next principle is definitely to take time to be intimate with each other. And a lot of people, when they hear the word intimate, they think sex right away. And it doesn't necessarily mean to have sex, but to be close, to take classes together, to do what my favorite thing in the whole wide world is Tantra. I mean, I think Tantra is probably the key to every relationship being amazing. And basically what Tantra is, it's kind of a form of meditation that helps you and your spouse bond. And and there's a lot of spiritual components to it with the chakras and a lot of stuff like that. But I think for kind of the everyday person who's maybe not into that kind of stuff, you can still use principles of it. Like, for example, looking at one another in the eyes and saying, what do you see when you look in my eyes? I mean, that little simple question can just open so many doors. I mean, you look in someone's eyes, and not just I see brown eyes, you want to look in and look, they always say eyes are the window to the soul, and I truly believe that's true. So to make sure that you're taking the time to do it, because there are so many couples that they don't even have sex anymore. They don't do anything intimate anymore. They're more like brother and sister. They're more like roommates. And every couple does that. I mean, it's a very, very small percentage of couples that have been together for 5, 7, 10 years that they're still like animalistic for each other, how they were in the beginning. A lot of couples make the mistake of what I call chasing the high from the beginning of the relationship. So they just want to get back to that way they were once. And to be honest, it's never going to get back to that way. So it might sound like kind of a dismal statement that it's never going to be the way it once was. But, you know, like everything in life, it's really the way you look at it. And if you're always looking at something in one way, there is a way to kind of shift that perspective. And I think it comes down to being open-minded. And I tend to believe, and I have seen, that the sex and the intimacy can be 50 or 100 times better than it ever was in the beginning. Yes, it's not going to be this, you know, I just met you, mysterious, exciting, crazy, natural chemicals just flowing everywhere. But it is going to be this deep connection that you can actually experience a physical reaction that you would never be able to accomplish with someone you just met. For example, there's something called the 1-hour orgasm. Now, no couple that just met one another is going to ever experience a 1-hour orgasm. It's just could never get to that level. But when you take the time and you really know someone and you've been through so much together and you've made it and you're still here together and all these psychological and emotional components that come into play, it's going to create a space for the type of intimacy and the type of physical feedback and feelings that you could never reach with someone you just met, that it can only happen with a couple that's proactive and that actually begins to implement certain things into their life that make it. I mean, people have asked couples, and also my own relationship, like, what drug are you on? Like, did you take ecstasy? And like, I've been with my boyfriend for almost 15 years, and people still ask us, like, are you guys like drunk or something? Like, what's wrong with you, you know? And it's more like, no, what's right with us? And that is all credited to being proactive and to going and finding and learning and looking and, you know, looking into one another and just really giving it a chance, the chance that it deserves.
Okay, beautiful. You mentioned something about mistakes that couples make. I wanted to just jump over to that really quickly. Do you see common things that people are doing that are mistakes that will end up not being helpful for the relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, probably the number one most important thing that just gets me so, makes my blood boil, is getting married for the wrong reason. First of all, marriage, and I know a lot of people are not going to like this, probably me saying this, but I don't mean it in the way that it sounds. It's an outdated idea. It's antiquated. And the reasons why marriage were first existed or don't exist anymore. So it's like we're on autopilot. It's like we meet this person, we fall in love, then we get married, then we have kids, then we, you know, and it's like this very regimented thing. And it's almost like people they want to stay in this fantasy kind of bubble that a wedding can tend to create. They call it the industrial wedding complex. There's actually a term for it, where people get so obsessed with the wedding and they lose the realities of what marriage is, and they get so focused on this party that it's like, now I have somebody, they're going to love me, and it's going to be great, it's going to be a fairy tale, and they have no idea what they're getting into, and they idealize not only the relationship, but they idealize their partner. And when a relationship or a person is put on this high pedestal, no one can live up to that. I mean, it's just not realistic. So getting married for the wrong reasons is probably the number one mistake that I see couples make, for sure. And then I think the second most important mistake that couples make is that when the relationship gets to the point where they're not animalistic for each other anymore. It feels more like brother and sister or roommates or best friends or something. They just leave it like that. And they tell themselves, I don't need to have sex. I don't need to have that. I have my friend. I have my family. I have my safe place to live and my great job. And that's all I need. And that is the biggest mistake a couple can make, because it's never going to continue like that. And if it does, I'm saying, if it doesn't lead to divorce, it will lead to the yearning for that connection with somebody, because you're not going to have it with that person anymore. And then not only do you not have it with this person anymore, but it begins to reflect on you as an individual and how you see yourself, and you're not a sexual being anymore, and you become this kind of frail, frigid person that thinks they don't need sex. And we're human beings. We need sex, and we need intimacy, and we need lovemaking, and we need all that. I mean, we are in essence animals at heart, in our very core, and biologically we need that connection with another person.
Okay. So you mentioned getting married for the wrong reasons. I heard you also say putting someone up on a pedestal or idealizing the way that the relationship would be, and then letting go of the intimacy and not fighting for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Are there other mistakes that you see commonly?
What's that?
Are there other mistakes that you see commonly?
There are a lot of mistakes. I think probably another huge one is definitely communication. We always hear this elusive communication is the key to everything, and nobody really knows what that means, but there really are principles, and there really are certain things that you can do to communicate properly. And really what communication is, people have this idea that communication is like, let's sit down and have a talk, and we're talking about our day and now we're communicating. But that is one form of communication. But the form of communication that these experts are really referring to is intimate and emotional communication. The type of communication that you're not just going over what happened during your day, but you're connecting and you're bonding and you're doing all that stuff I kind of mentioned before. So really, every expert, if you know anything about communication or experts talking about it, everybody recommends there's variations of it, but what it's called in my field is reflective listening. And it is a game changer. It's the difference between me saying something and then my partner getting defensive and saying, no, you're wrong, that's not the way it is, or I didn't mean that. That's a huge thing that really bothers me. Like when people say, that wasn't my intention, I didn't intend to hurt you, but you did. And I don't want to hear you say I didn't intend to, because that's not taking responsibility. That's just basically minimizing my feelings. So using reflective listening and saying, so what I'm hearing you say is, when I didn't come home that night or I didn't call you, it really made you feel unloved and like I didn't care about you. That one little tiny thing, it's so simple. It's mind-blowing what a big difference something so small can make. And then that person feels hurt and like, I felt like you didn't love me. I felt like you didn't care. You're out hanging out with your friends, and I'm home waiting for you, and you couldn't even give me a call and let me know you're going to be late, And that's it, just acknowledging that okay, I see that. Maybe of course I didn't intend to make you feel unloved, but that's not the point, That's definitely something in a communication setting that just gets me. When they say, I didn't intend, or I didn't mean, or no, it wasn't like that. And a lot of times, it used to be that men were the ones that would try to explain away or fix. But, times are changing, and roles are, evening out or even reversing in some cases. So even now, there are a lot of women that will tend to try to explain or fix, and real good, honest, productive communication is not about explaining or fixing. It's about understanding and helping the person to feel understood, and then to be able to get through it. I think the coolest thing is when a couple has an argument, which a lot of people think you should avoid arguments, but I don't. I think you should have arguments all the time, and you should do it in front of the kids if you know how to do it in a healthy way. And the healthy way is being able to, of course, not hit below the belt, keep your voice at a normal tone. I always say speak in sentences, not chapters, because nobody wants to sit there while someone gets on their soapbox lecturing. You want to have a conversation and really feel heard. And I think that makes a tremendous difference in communication style. And I think that's what experts mean when they say communication is everything, not just sitting down and having a talk about how work was.
So So communication, the biggest part of that, what I'm hearing you say, is the reflective listening, so that the other person feels understood and validated, and not like the other person is just trying to blow off their feelings.
And you basically just did it by repeating back to me what you heard. And then another part of that, which I just remember now, is then when you repeat it back to me, maybe it would make me think of something else I want to say, which it just did, which is the thing that I want to add on to that is that it's good to, and I think I was meant to say it before, but I forgot. The thing that's good about arguing, especially in front of the kids, is being able to get to the end of an argument and say, okay, I get your point. Maybe I don't agree with you, but I get you. I hear you. I love you. And maybe I don't agree with you, but I love you still. And this is cool. We just got through this, and we're still here. No one ran away. Nobody's crying. Nobody, projected any kind of violence, or, and you can get through it. That is what I think is truly successful exchange with the person that you care about, is to get through it and to be able to still look at each other and not run out and, cause it, start a temper tantrum or something.
Yeah, so I think you bring up a really good point, Cory, about being able to argue in a healthy way. So let me just see if I understand all the points. So you said keep your voice at a reasonable level, don't raise it, don't hit below the belt, which would probably mean along the lines of criticizing or bringing up past stuff.
Personal attacks.
Okay, personal attacks.
Or attacks on their family or friends, that's another thing.
Okay, so none of that. Doing the reflective listening, and then being able to get to the end of it, and even if you don't agree, understanding, and no one's running away or leaving the scene of the crime.
Yeah, exactly. I often hear people say, you don't listen to me, you're not listening to me, and that can be taken in so many different ways. Some people might mean when they say you're not listening to me, like you don't do what I tell you. Like I tell you to go sit down and you don't listen to me. Somebody might be thinking that. Somebody might really feel like you don't listen to me. Like I don't feel heard when I speak to you. So really understanding what does your person mean and what are they trying to say to you.
Okay, great. All right, so we've covered a lot of territory here. We've talked about some of the principles, then we got into mistakes, and then we talked about healthy arguments. Let's see, what have we not covered at this point? I mean, and there's a lot of places we could go from here, but I also want to let you direct the types of information we're covering, since you're the expert.
I think one thing that's another comes to the top of my head is, and it kind of is all related to all this stuff, is touching. Touching, when if you notice, I don't know if you know people who've been together for a long time, if you see people who've been together for a long time, a lot of times they won't touch each other. They won't even, I'm not even talking about like any kind of sexual touch. There are actually, I think, 4 or 5 different types of touch, and they range everything from a healthy, healing touch, to a caring, caressing touch, to an intimate touch, to emotional touch, and then of course we have the erotic and the sexual touch. So a lot of times I hear people say, I don't want my partner to touch me, because then they automatically think that I'm going to have sex with them. Like the only time they ever touch me is if they want to have sex. So that's why it's so important to utilize all the different types of touch, and not be expecting to have sex or to get some kind of sexual favor just because you're touching. And I think that if the couples can practice those different kinds of touch without expecting any kind of outcome from that also helps create intimacy. So touching is extremely important, and it really speaks volumes about a couple, where they stand. And I can really look at a couple and I can see them interact for a little while, and I can tell exactly what's going on with them just from body language. And yeah, I can do that, and I can also determine whether or not a couple is going to get divorced, or even if they don't get divorced, if they're going to end up being unhappy in the next 5 to 10 years. You could tell by the way that they talk to each other, the way their body language is, by the way they touch or don't touch. And it is kind of like when you're saying, are there common things you see Yes, I mean, I've almost been doing this for 15 years, and while I don't like to, put people into a category, or I'm not really a fan of necessarily diagnosing. The reason why those things are done is because there is common practice, and there is, common ways that couples relate to each other, and what ends up happening depending on how they relate. So it's not a judgment per se, as much as it's a look, I've seen this before, this is what's going to happen. I mean, I don't want to be mean, but or put like a hex on you, but I'm just saying what I'm seeing, and hopefully I can do that in a loving, empathetic way that inspires and motivates the couple to want to do things differently, which is very difficult. I mean, anybody knows. I mean, even like, with the health stuff too. I mean, we're used to eating a certain way. We're used to, having a routine in our life. And it's really about implementing little habits over time and forgiving when we kind of have a setback or, a relapse or whatever, and just, continuing to truck on after that and not say, oh, well, I messed up, I'm just going to forget about it, So
what are some of the clues that you see when you're working with people that would either indicate that it's a healthy, happy relationship with a good future or not?
Definitely, I mean, things that I had mentioned kind of already, like if they're touching, how they're touching. I can definitely tell. I have a few couples who I always say they're like boys. Like how boys are with their, not boys, like little kids, like you're my boy, like type, like, they'll touch like you touch your dude, like your friend, like your guy friend, or like a guy would touch his girl, like he would like tap her on the back, or like do something that like you would do to your boy, not like to your woman that you love, type thing. So that's huge. Looking at each other in the eyes, and just, I mean, you know when somebody, I think if we really think about it, we know, not just because I'm an expert, anybody can really tell, I think. When you look at a couple, wow, they are in love. The way they look at each other, like, if the guy's like, takes her hair and like moves it over, like just little things like that maybe would go unnoticed, but if you're paying attention, you would see it. And I pay attention, so I guess that's when I see it. But it is as simple as that, the way people look at each other, the way they treat each other, the way they talk to each other, it's really, it's very telling.
Okay, that makes sense. So there's this whole idea of masculine and feminine, and there's this whole philosophy around, the two different roles, and we all each have masculine and feminine, whether we're a male or a female. Is that something that you have studied or that you would like to speak on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important, especially with my whole thing being like the modern monogamy thing. Like I said before, roles and rules are changing, and things aren't as defined as they once were, and it can get really tricky if you don't sit down and have those conversations. So, when the men went to work and the women stayed home, and when pretty much all the women stayed home, and there was a time, whether or not we believe it or remember it, where no women really went to work. I mean, it was very few and far between, especially, well, maybe single women maybe, but not when you're in a relationship and you have children. The women stayed home, and men didn't have time to be emotional and to think about those kinds of things. They worked all day. They had a whole life outside of their home, and it wasn't thought of the way it is now. We didn't understand that we could learn and do it differently. They would come home from work and they would be pooped, and they would, plop down on the couch and sit there, whatever they did, whatever their routine was. And maybe, of course the woman was working all day at home too, but, she, just being home, and maybe, she had more time to think, and women were just more emotional. But, and when I started my practice, it was always the women who would call and say, hey, we need help. We need a person to work with. It was always constantly the woman. But in the past, 5 years or so, I literally, it's probably, I know it sounds crazy, but just off the top of my head, it's almost 90% that are the men. I'm trying to even think the last time a woman, actually no, I do have one woman recently that contacted me. One woman. Out of all the couples that I've worked with in the past couple years or whatever, actually, it's just crazy to think about it, that it really is the men that are reaching out and saying, we need help, we want to be closer, and it's like they have more time to think now. I mean, that's the only thing. I mean, I'm sure there are some other theories as to why that is, but that's what comes to my mind as to why it's changed so much. So I really hate when people talk about all the differences in men and women and how they're so different. I think it's so much more productive, since we do want to, a lot of us spend time with a person of the opposite sex, that we talk about the similarities and the things we have in common, as opposed to, you know, the men are from Mars, women from Venus thing. I mean, it's nice to understand things, but we put so much emphasis on the differences that I feel like whatever we put emphasis on gets bigger. So, yeah, maybe we can have a little understanding of it, but when it comes to putting our energy really places, let's think about the things that we have in common and how we can join forces and come together. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a really interesting point. It's something important to discuss, because it is out there, and gender roles and rules and all that, you know, they're always playing a part in what we do and how we live.
Right. What about in dating? You know, there's this whole philosophy of letting the man lead, and, you know, letting the man step up and be the hunter, because that's his biological evolutionary, you know, tendencies.
Well, you actually hit the nail on the head right there. When we talk about evolution is all about change. So we don't want to continue, in my mind, we don't want to continue doing what we've always done and putting people in boxes. You know, yes, maybe at one point men were the hunters and gatherers, but, you know, times are changing, and we need to change with the times. And I truly believe in the bottom of my heart and soul, and I set up a lot of people, and I work with a lot of singles, that you need to be yourself. I mean, these games of, you know, waiting to call and, you know, letting them, you know, be the leader, or, you know, pretending this or pretending that, that's never going to last long. I mean, that could last for a very short while, but you can only pretend for so long. I mean, eventually they're going to know the real you. And that's actually another mistake that people make and couples make, is that be the real you from the beginning. That's the easiest one, to be the real you, because you're not so invested, and now they think something, and now you got to go backtrack. When you meet them in the beginning, just be you. I mean, that's the best advice I can give for single people looking for love. Like, if you would say this, say it. Don't think, should I say this or should I do this? Just be natural and be who you are. And you know what? I like wacky, crazy things about people, because I think that those are kind of like feelers on who's going to be good for you. Like, if I have this crazy thing about me, like, say I just do something really weird and I hide it from the person forever, I think you should do it from the beginning, because if that person is meant to be with you, they're going to love you because of that thing, or in spite of that thing, you know? So that thing can actually help you determine who's authentic and who's real and who really wants you for who you really are, because none of us are perfect, and we got to show our imperfections from the beginning, because then it kind of goes back to what we were saying about the pedestal. We can, even if we put ourselves on this pedestal, we're never going to be able to stay up there, you know, and eventually we're going to fall down, and when we do, it's not fair for the person who thought they were in a relationship with this one person. They're really not in a relationship with that person. They're really in a relationship with this person that falls off pedestals, you know? So I think you should always be yourself, always.
Okay, excellent. All right, Cory, so as we start wrapping up, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to, that's important for your philosophy, for these principles that we're talking about, that you would like for people to know?
Yes. That's a great question, and I really appreciate you asking it, because I just want people to understand that the way the divorce rate is, it does not have to continue being like that. We do have a chance at real love, and the type of love that we can have, it transcends everything and anything you can ever imagine. So just don't put your relationship on autopilot. You have to actually have a map and a path on where you would like to go. And that includes all the stuff we talked about, the prevention stuff, and the, you know, the enjoying your own life and customizing your relationship and taking time for intimacy. All those things, while they might seem a little difficult, take baby steps. Make little goals for yourself. You know, maybe just do 1 hour a week where you can really have an intimate communication, and just take baby steps, and little by little, it's going to feel so good. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. And please, please, please be good role models for your children, because the children are the future. And we want them to have good love too, because love is everything, everything. I mean, money and materialistic things. I mean, we all know this. I mean, I could cry right now. Literally, I feel like I'm getting teary-eyed about how important love is, and it just makes everything so amazing. And I just want everyone to experience that, and they can.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you're right. You know, it is about the little steps and starting to tweak your habits and find ways that work, and don't put it on autopilot, like you said. And this is so true in not just relationships, but in our health too. There's so many crossovers. It's the same principles.
100%. Yep. Yeah. I'm so happy that you actually included someone like me in this summit, because relationships are so important, and I just feel honored and very, very grateful that I can speak to, you know, all your participants and everybody who signs up about love and how important it is. And I just hope that, you know, everybody who's listening takes some value from it and just implements one little thing, and that'll be great.
Yes, and thank you so much, Cory. You know, this is an important topic. You know, love is what I believe we're all here for, you know, in this world. It's one of the main reasons that we're here, is for love and connection. And that goes for that relationship with ourselves, and then as an extension of that, for the relationships that we have in our lives, and especially that one special intimate relationship. So it's so important. This summit isn't just about health. It really is about looking at all aspects of health and happiness.
Yes.
So great. So your insights have been just so valuable today. I want to ask you the last question, which I'm asking all of the speakers this year, and that is, what are the 3 most pivotal things that you have learned on your journey that you wished you'd known sooner?
Definitely kind of reverting back to those principles. One, that I am not the most important person in the world. I think when we're really young, that we are the extent of our world, and it's okay when you're young, but to understand the importance of people and the role that they play in our journey and our overall happiness, and to really get to know yourself in a way that you can share it with the people around you, and you can teach people how to treat you. And then third thing is to just empathize and understand people, and especially the person that you select to be with, and be there for them when they need you, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We need to be there for each other and support each other and understand each other. So I think those would probably be the 3 most important things that I've learned over my life.
Beautiful. So, Cory, I heard you say number 1 is the importance of relationships, and number 2, getting to know yourself, and then being able to teach other people how to treat you. Mm-hmm. And what you didn't say, what's inferred, is that that's your responsibility, right?
Yes.
And then 3, to empathize with and understand your partner and other people.
Yes.
Great.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, why don't you tell everyone where they can connect with you? And I know you have an audio course, which sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken a while to kind of develop that. It's a free audio course, a very short, mini 5-day audio course, where you can listen all at once, or you can listen, 5 consecutive days, or whenever you want to listen to it. It's called How to Discover Your Emotional Needs, and that really plays a huge role in learning about yourself and how to articulate your needs to your spouse. And emotional needs are so important, and they really make us who we are, and they're the key to that, to creating that intimacy. So having those tools really help you to evolve as a human being, and to evolve your emotional intelligence, which I also discuss on that free audio course. It can be found at wherelovehappens.com. So that's just WHERE, love happens with an S.com. You just put your name and your email in, and you get that free audio course. And I really tried with that audio course that when you are done listening to it, you will know more about yourself, and you'll understand how to relay that information to the person that you love. That was my goal. So I hope I did a good job of that, and I look forward to people listening to it.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to have a link for everyone, but once again, that's wherelovehappens.com. So make sure you get the 5-part audio course, How to Discover Your Emotional Needs. And that sounds truly amazing. I think anytime you can get to know yourself better, that's a worthwhile endeavor. So thank you so much, Cory Honickman, for being part of the summit this year.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure, and I really appreciate talking to you and everything we've done.
Excellent. All right, well, to everyone listening, thank you for being part of this summit. I really do appreciate you tuning in for all of these interviews. I know we've had a lot of speakers this year, a lot of great information, and I love that you're part of this, and we can start changing the world one person at a time. If you haven't purchased your audio package, make sure you do so, because you're going to want to listen to these interviews over and over, and you're going to hear something new and exciting and interesting each and every time. Until next time, I am wishing everyone listening and watching so much health and so much happiness. This is Marcie Peters, your host, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us for Transform Your Health World Summit and for being part of this revolution. It's not too late to invite others. And don't forget to purchase the Summit Package so you can listen to this valuable information again and again.